In a city locked under curfew, the National Guard patrolled like conquerors, certain no one could stand against them. To their eyes, he was just another black man on the street, vulnerable, outnumbered, powerless. They saw no reason to fear, mistaking his silence for weakness and his calm for submission. What they couldn't know was that he had spent 15 years as a Delta Force commander, forged in battlefields where hesitation meant death. When their shouts turned into threats and their rifles rose, the man they believed was prey revealed himself as something far more dangerous than they ever imagined. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The city felt like a war zone. The rhythmic thump of helicopter blades echoed between buildings, casting moving shadows across the streets below. Marcus Steele stood at his apartment window, watching an armored vehicle rumble past, its heavy tires crushing discarded protest signs into the asphalt. His neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, had called earlier asking for help. Her arthritis was acting up, and she needed groceries. Marcus couldn't say no. She'd been looking out for him since he moved into the building 6 months ago, always sharing her wisdom and homemade cornbread. "Just be careful out there," she'd warned. "These soldiers, they don't care about who you are or what you've done for this country." Marcus pulled on his gray t-shirt and olive cargo pants, comfortable clothes that wouldn't draw attention. 15 years of Delta Force operations had taught him to blend in, to move like a ghost when needed. But today, he knew his skin color would make him a target, no matter how he dressed. The streets were eerily quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. Store windows were mostly dark, with closed signs hanging crooked in the glass. The few people brave enough to be outside hurried along with their heads down, avoiding eye contact with the armed soldiers posted at major intersections. A commotion ahead caught Marcus's attention. A group of young black men were being harassed by National Guard soldiers, their backs against a brick wall as rifles pointed at their chests. Marcus's jaw clenched. He recognized one of them, Darius Johnson, or DJ, as everyone called him. The kid was always organizing community meetings, trying to make positive change. DJ's eyes were wide with fear, but there was defiance there too. Marcus watched as the young man waited for the perfect moment, when one soldier turned to talk into his radio, then slipped sideways into a gathering crowd of onlookers. Smart kid. The soldier's angry shout followed DJ, but the crowd had already swallowed him up. Marcus felt a mix of pride and anger. Pride at DJ's quick thinking, anger at the situation that made such evasion necessary. Walking past the scene, Marcus noted how the soldiers ignored white pedestrians completely. Their eyes tracked only darker faces, their hands tightening on their weapons whenever a black person came too close. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Marcus's combat-trained mind cataloged everything. The positioning of the armored vehicles, the patrol patterns, the communication intervals between soldiers. Old habits died hard, and right now, those habits were telling him something was very wrong with this operation. A helicopter swooped lower than usual, its searchlight sweeping the street. Marcus kept his pace steady, but his muscles tensed. He'd been under similar lights before, but always as the hunter, never the hunted. The role reversal left a bitter taste in his mouth. The grocery store was half empty, its shelves picked clean by panic buyers. Marcus filled his basket with Mrs. Carter's requests: bread, milk, canned soup, and her favorite brand of tea. The teenage cashier's hands shook as she rang him up, flinching at every helicopter pass. "You okay?" Marcus asked softly. "My brother," she whispered, bagging his items. "They took him in last night. Said he matched a description. He was just walking home from work." Marcus nodded slowly, understanding flooding through him. How many others had been snatched up under vague pretexts? How many families were missing sons, brothers, fathers? The weight of the grocery bags was nothing compared to the heaviness in his chest as he started back toward his apartment building. Every step brought new signs of the crackdown's impact. Scared faces peeking through windows, abandoned cars with doors still open, discarded belongings from people who'd run when the soldiers appeared. As he turned a corner, movement caught his peripheral vision. Two National Guard soldiers stepped out from behind an armored vehicle, their rifles already raised. The first one, young and wiry with Miller on his nameplate, had his finger too close to the trigger. The second, O'Connor, was broader, with cold eyes and a jaw clenched too tight. "Stop right there!" Miller barked, his voice cracking slightly. "Hands where we can see them!" Marcus froze, grocery bags still clutched in his hands. He'd been in countless firefights, defused bombs, rescued hostages, but something about these two soldiers pointing rifles at him on an American street made his blood boil in a way no foreign enemy ever had. "ID, now!" O'Connor demanded, taking an aggressive step forward. Marcus knew he should feel afraid. These were armed men with the power of the state behind them. But all he felt was a calm clarity, the kind that came before a mission. His muscles coiled, ready. Years of training sang in his blood. "I'm reaching for my wallet," Marcus said evenly, watching both men's trigger fingers. "It's in my back pocket." The grocery bags hung from his wrists, apples and canned goods shifting inside. Mrs. Carter's tea bags crinkled. Somewhere above, a helicopter circled, its blades cutting through the tension like a knife. The soldiers circled Marcus like wolves, their boots scraping against the cracked pavement. O'Connor's face twisted with disgust as he gestured at Marcus with his rifle. "On the ground! Now!" Miller's command echoed off the brick buildings. Marcus slowly set down the grocery bags, the plastic crinkling in the tense silence. People were gathering at the edges of the scene, phones raised to capture whatever was about to unfold. The afternoon sun cast harsh shadows across the soldiers' faces, highlighting their sneers. "I said on the ground!" Miller repeated, jabbing his rifle forward. Marcus kept his movements deliberate and calm. "I'm a veteran," he said clearly, wanting witnesses to hear. "I have identification." "Shut up!" O'Connor cut him off. "Face down, hands behind your head." Marcus complied, the rough asphalt pressing against his cheek. The position was humiliating. Exactly what they wanted. He could feel the heat of the pavement through his clothes, smell the oil stains and cigarette butts ground into the street. His military training screamed at him to react, but he forced himself to stay still. "Look at this one," Miller taunted, circling closer. "Thinks he's special, 'cause he says he's a veteran." O'Connor laughed, a harsh sound that carried to the growing crowd. "Probably just another gangbanger trying to play soldier." Phones kept recording as O'Connor moved to cuff Marcus. His knee dug painfully into Marcus's back, grinding him against the asphalt. The cuffs were too tight, metal biting into Marcus's wrists. "Not so tough now, are you?" O'Connor sneered, yanking Marcus's arms roughly. Marcus remained silent, even as his shoulders strained. He'd been trained to withstand far worse. But then O'Connor did something that crossed the line. He raised his rifle and brought the butt down hard across Marcus's back. The crack of metal against flesh seemed to echo through the street. Someone in the crowd screamed. Pain exploded across Marcus's spine, and with it, something inside him snapped. 15 years of Delta Force training took over. In one fluid motion, Marcus rolled, his legs sweeping O'Connor's feet from under him. The soldier crashed down, his rifle clattering away. Before Miller could react, Marcus was up, moving like liquid lightning. His cuffed hands caught O'Connor's arm, twisting it at an impossible angle. The crack of breaking bone was followed by O'Connor's howl of pain. Marcus used the momentum to swing the larger man into Miller, sending them both stumbling. The crowd gasped collectively. Phones wavered but kept recording as Marcus moved with terrifying precision. His cuffed hands should have been a disadvantage, but he turned them into a weapon, the metal chain becoming an extension of his reach. Miller recovered first, swinging his rifle like a club. Marcus ducked under it easily, years of close-quarters combat making the soldier's movements seem almost comically slow. His elbow found Miller's solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. O'Connor charged again, face red with rage and humiliation. Marcus shifted his weight, redirecting the soldier's momentum. O'Connor's own force sent him crashing into a parked car, denting the door. "Stand down!" Miller wheezed, trying to bring his rifle to bear. Marcus moved faster than anyone watching thought possible. His foot connected with Miller's knee, not hard enough to cripple, but enough to fold the joint. As Miller stumbled, Marcus's shoulder drove into his chest, slamming him against the brick wall. The rifle clattered to the ground. Marcus kicked it away, sending it spinning across the asphalt. O'Connor was struggling to his feet, his right arm hanging useless. "You're dead," he snarled, reaching for his sidearm with his left hand. Marcus closed the distance in 2 steps. His hands, still cuffed, caught O'Connor's gun hand. A quick twist, and the pistol joined the rifles on the ground. Another precision strike to a pressure point, and O'Connor collapsed, conscious but unable to move. The entire fight had lasted less than 30 seconds. Marcus stood in the middle of the street, chest heaving slightly. Both soldiers lay groaning on the pavement, alive but thoroughly defeated. The crowd had grown larger, dozens of phones capturing every moment. Some people were cheering, others just stared in shock. The sound of engines grew louder. Heavy tires squealed against asphalt as 3 Humvees rounded the corner, filled with armed National Guard reinforcements. They screeched to a halt, forming a semicircle around the scene. Soldiers poured out, rifles raised. Marcus didn't move. Sweat trickled down his back where O'Connor's rifle butt had struck him, but he ignored the pain. His breathing was already steady again, his posture relaxed but ready. He'd faced worse odds in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. The new soldiers spread out, their boots scraping on broken glass and scattered debris. Their rifles tracked Marcus's every breath, but he noticed something in their eyes: uncertainty. They'd just watched him dismantle 2 of their own with almost casual ease while handcuffed. Traffic had stopped completely. The crowd pressed against building walls, still recording. Helicopter blades chopped the air overhead, and somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The grocery bags lay forgotten on the ground. Misses. Carter's tea spilling onto the street. Miller and O'Connor remained down, their groans of pain mixing with the mechanical sounds of weapons being readied. The afternoon sun glinted off rifle barrels and tactical gear as the backup squad took positions, creating a ring of steel around Marcus. A soldier with sergeant's stripes stepped forward, his voice tight with forced authority. "On your knees! Final warning!" Marcus analyzed the situation with practiced precision. 12 soldiers, all armed, spread in a semicircle. Behind them, more troops spilling from vehicles. The crowd had swelled to maybe 50 people. All potential casualties if this went wrong. "I'm giving you one chance," Marcus said calmly, his hands still cuffed. "Stand down." The sergeant's answer came in the form of a hand signal. 2 soldiers rushed Marcus from opposite sides, trying to pin him. Big mistake. Marcus dropped and rolled, causing them to collide with each other. In the same motion, he swept one soldier's legs, sending him sprawling. The other threw a punch that Marcus caught between his cuffed hands, using the chain to twist the soldier's arm. With a quick pivot, he sent the man flying into a nearby lamppost with a resounding clang. "Get him!" the sergeant shouted, his composure cracking. 3 more soldiers charged. Marcus moved like water between them, his military training evident in every precise movement. He caught one soldier's rifle, using the man's own momentum to flip him over his hip. The soldier crashed into his comrades, sending them stumbling. The crowd's nervous silence had transformed into cheers. "Get 'em!" someone shouted. "Show those bullies!" A soldier managed to grab Marcus from behind. Bad move. Marcus dropped his weight, breaking the hold with textbook precision. He spun, driving his elbow into the man's ribs, hard enough to disable, not enough to cause permanent damage. "He's one man!" the sergeant screamed, face red with fury. "Take him down!" Two soldiers opened fire, but Marcus was already moving. He rolled behind a parked car as bullets pinged off metal. Glass shattered, raining down on the sidewalk. Civilians screamed and ducked for cover. "Hold your fire!" Marcus shouted. "There are civilians everywhere!" He stayed low, counting heartbeats. When the firing paused, he exploded into motion. Running straight at the nearest soldier, Marcus dropped into a baseball slide, taking the man's legs out. As the soldier fell, Marcus caught his tactical vest, using him as a shield against his own comrades. "Nobody shoots!" Marcus commanded, his voice carrying the weight of years of battlefield authority. Some of the younger soldiers actually lowered their weapons instinctively, responding to that tone of command. A burly corporal tried to rush him with a baton. Marcus released his human shield and met the charge head-on. The corporal swung, a trained strike, but telegraphed. Marcus slipped inside his guard, trapped the arm, and executed a perfect hip throw. The corporal hit the pavement hard, his baton skittering away. The crowd was fully invested now, their cheers building to a roar. "Take them all down! Show them what a real soldier looks like!" More soldiers poured in from the Humvees, but they moved hesitantly, having witnessed what happened to their comrades. Marcus stood in the center of the chaos, his breathing controlled, his movements economical. Sweat darkened his gray t-shirt, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. A young private tried to be clever, attempting to tase Marcus from behind. Marcus heard the crackle of electricity and reacted instantly. He spun, catching the taser wires with his cuffed hands. The rubber soles of his boots insulated him as he yanked, pulling the private off balance. A quick knee strike put the soldier down, groaning but conscious. "This is pointless," Marcus announced, his voice carrying. "You're not trained for this. Stand down before someone gets hurt worse." The sergeant, face purple with rage, drew his sidearm. "Last chance! On the ground!" Marcus moved like a ghost. One moment he was 10 feet away. The next he was inside the sergeant's guard. His cuffed hands caught the gun, pushing it up and away. His foot swept the sergeant's legs, and suddenly the man was airborne, landing hard on his back. The pistol clattered away across the asphalt. The remaining soldiers formed a ragged circle, weapons raised but clearly uncertain. They just watched one man, in handcuffs, dismantle more than a dozen of their comrades without killing or permanently injuring any of them. "Enough," Marcus said firmly. He reached slowly into his back pocket, making sure everyone could see his movements. The soldiers tensed, but no one fired. Marcus pulled out a worn leather wallet. It fell open, revealing a military ID card that gleamed in the afternoon sun. "Commander Marcus Steele, Delta Force, retired. Check my credentials." A ripple went through the crowd. Someone whistled. "Delta Force? Holy shit! No wonder he moved like that." The nearest soldier, a young specialist, stepped forward cautiously to examine the ID. His eyes widened. "Sir, this is legitimate. Full credentials, top-level clearance." The other soldiers lowered their weapons, looking uncertainly at each other. The specialist straightened, almost coming to attention out of habit. "Sir, I apologize for—" A burst of static cut through the air as every soldier's radio crackled to life. The voice that came through was hard and cold, dripping with authority, and barely contained rage. "This is Colonel Harlow," it announced. "Detain that man immediately. I repeat, Commander Steele is to be detained. Do not let him walk away. Use whatever force necessary." The soldiers hesitated, caught between respect for Marcus's credentials and their direct orders. The crowd went silent, phones still recording, as the tension ratcheted up another notch. Marcus raised his hands slowly, deliberately. The crowd held its breath, phones still recording. His military ID card lay on the ground, catching sunlight. A small piece of plastic that should have meant something, should have mattered. "You heard the colonel's orders," the specialist said, his voice wavering. "Please don't resist, Commander." 20 years, Marcus said quietly. "I bled for this country, lost friends for it. And this is what it comes to?" Two soldiers approached with zip ties, their movements hesitant. Marcus didn't fight them. He let them secure his hands behind his back, tighter than necessary. The plastic bit into his wrists. From the edge of the crowd, an elderly voice cut through the tension. "You ought to be ashamed of yourselves." Mrs. Evelyn Carter pushed her way forward, her weathered face tight with anger. "This man is a hero. He served while you were still in diapers." "Ma'am, step back," a soldier warned, raising his rifle. "Don't you dare point that thing at me." Evelyn's voice carried the steel of someone who'd faced down worse threats. "I marched with Dr. King. I've seen this before. Good men treated like criminals because of the color of their skin." More voices joined her. "Let him go. He's a veteran. This isn't right." A black SUV with tinted windows screeched to a halt. Colonel Richard Harlow stepped out, his presence immediately dominating the scene. Tall, gray-haired, with cold eyes and pressed uniform, he radiated authority and contempt in equal measure. "Commander Steele," Harlow said, his voice dripping with false courtesy. "Quite a show you've put on. Assaulting National Guard personnel, inciting civil unrest." "You know that's not what happened," Marcus replied evenly. "Your men assaulted me. I defended myself." Harlow's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's not what the official report will say." He turned to his men. "Get him in the transport. Now." Private Miller and Specialist O'Connor had recovered enough to stand, though both moved gingerly. Miller's nose was swollen, blood staining his uniform. O'Connor cradled his arm, face twisted with pain and humiliation. "Not so tough now, are you?" Miller spat as Marcus was marched past. Marcus just looked at him, saying nothing. His silence seemed to infuriate Miller more than any words could have. They shoved him roughly toward an armored truck. The crowd's protests grew louder. Someone threw a water bottle that bounced off a soldier's helmet. "Back up," Harlow commanded. "This is a military operation. Interference will result in immediate arrest." "Military operation?" Evelyn's voice cut through again. "This is persecution. You're dishonoring everything that uniform stands for." Marcus caught her eye as they pushed him into the truck. She stood straight-backed, defiant, tears streaming down her face. Around her, phones recorded everything, live streaming the injustice to the world. The truck's interior was dark and cold. Marcus sat on the hard metal bench, surrounded by armed guards who pointedly avoided eye contact. Through the small window, he could see news vans arriving, their satellite dishes extending skyward. A small TV screen mounted in the truck's cabin flickered to life. Breaking news graphics flashed across it. Marcus watched in disgust as politicians and pundits began spinning their narrative. "A disturbing incident of domestic terrorism," one senator declared. "This man used military training against our peacekeepers. He represents a serious threat. Sources say he may have ties to extremist groups," a news anchor added. "His attack on National Guard personnel raises serious questions about—" Marcus clenched his fist so hard The zip ties cut deeper. 20 years of service, countless classified missions, friends who died believing in something bigger than themselves. All of it meant nothing the moment he became inconvenient to power. "So this is what my service means to them," he whispered to himself, voice barely audible over the truck's engine. The guards shifted uncomfortably, perhaps hearing the weight of betrayal in those words. Outside, sirens wailed as more military vehicles converged on the scene. The truck lurched forward, carrying Marcus away from the community he'd tried to protect. Through the window, he caught a final glimpse of the street. Mrs. Carter stood her ground, still shouting at the soldiers. Other residents had joined her, forming a line of protest. Phones recorded everything, their lenses like tiny eyes of judgment, broadcasting this moment of injustice to the world. The armored truck turned a corner, and the scene disappeared. In the darkness, Marcus sat perfectly still, his posture military straight, despite his restraints. His face revealed nothing, but his mind was already working, analyzing angles, assessing weaknesses. They thought they were transporting a broken man, a soldier betrayed by his country. They were wrong. They were transporting a Delta Force commander who'd spent his career accomplishing the impossible. And they had just given him something he hadn't had in years. A mission. The truck rumbled through the streets, its occupants unaware that their prisoner's apparent defeat was merely the calm before a storm. Marcus had learned long ago that true strength wasn't in winning the first fight. It was in getting back up after being knocked down. And he wasn't done getting up. The detention facility's interrogation room was deliberately uncomfortable. Cold metal chair, harsh fluorescent lights, and a steel table bolted to the floor. Marcus sat with perfect posture, his training evident even in captivity. His wrists bore red marks from the zip ties, but his face remained impassive. 2 guard officers loomed over him. Captain James Walsh, 45, stood with his arms crossed, while Lieutenant Sarah Peters, 38, paced the room. Behind the one-way glass, Colonel Harlow watched, his presence felt even when unseen. "Let's try this again," Walsh said, leaning forward. "Who are your contacts in the black insurgency movement?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "There is no insurgency. You're creating enemies where none exist." Peters slammed her hands on the table. "We have intelligence reports." "You have nothing," Marcus cut her off, "except orders to terrorize civilians based on their skin color." Walsh's face reddened. "You assaulted National Guard personnel." "After they attacked me without cause." Marcus's voice remained calm, professional. "Everything that happened is on video. The world saw the truth." "The world sees what we tell them to see," Peters sneered. "Right now, you're a dangerous radical who turned against his country." Marcus almost smiled. "Is that what Colonel Harlow told you to say?" The intercom crackled. "That's enough," Harlow's voice commanded. "Give him some time to think about his situation." The officers left, but Marcus wasn't alone for long. Sergeant Linda Kane entered, carrying a medical kit. She was younger than the others, with kind eyes that couldn't quite hide her discomfort with the situation. "I need to check your vitals," she said, loud enough for the cameras to hear. Then, quieter, "Hold still while I take your blood pressure." As she wrapped the cuff around his arm, Kane's fingers brushed his wrist, slipping a small piece of paper into his hand. Marcus kept his expression neutral, palm closing around the message. "Blood pressure's a bit high," she announced for the record, "but that's to be expected under the circumstances." She cleaned the marks on his wrists with careful, gentle movements. "You served our country," she whispered, barely audible. "This isn't right." Marcus gave her the slightest nod of acknowledgement. She packed up her kit and left, the door clicking shut behind her. When he was sure no one was watching, Marcus unfolded the paper. The handwriting was neat, precise. Cracked down, political power grab. Election in 3 months. Mayor Collins plus Senator Hayes behind it. Be careful. They're desperate. Marcus committed the words to memory, then chewed and swallowed the paper. The pieces fell into place. The targeted harassment, the media spin, the rush to brand him a terrorist. This wasn't about law and order. It was about control. The door opened again. Colonel Harlow entered, his boots echoing on the concrete floor. He carried himself with the arrogance of a man unused to being questioned. "Comfortable, Commander?" Harlow's smile was cold. "I hope you're being treated well." "Drop the act," Marcus replied. "We both know what this is." Harlow's smile vanished. "What this is the end of your career, your reputation, everything you built." He leaned closer. "Unless you cooperate. Denounce the troublemakers. Help us restore order." "You mean help you suppress voters before the election?" A flicker of surprise crossed Harlow's face, quickly masked. "Careful, Commander. That sounds like conspiracy theory talk. We wouldn't want people thinking you've become unstable." "People are already thinking, Colonel. That's what scares you." Harlow straightened, adjusting his uniform. "Pack him up," he called to the guards. "The convoy leaves in 10 minutes. 4 armed soldiers entered, weapons ready. They weren't taking chances after seeing what Marcus could do. As they escorted him through the facility's corridors, Marcus observed everything: shift changes, patrol patterns, the rhythm of their movements. Outside, an armored convoy waited. 3 vehicles, lead truck, prisoner transport in the middle, rear guard. Standard formation, but Marcus noted the subtle details. The driver of the transport was nervous, grip too tight on the wheel. The rear guard's radio had a slight delay, creating a communication gap. They secured him in the transport's holding cell, double-checking his restraints. Marcus allowed himself to be moved like a compliant prisoner, all while mapping angles, timing, distances. His mind worked like a computer, processing variables, calculating possibilities. "Watch him," one guard warned another. "He's Delta Force. Don't let the calm fool you." They were right to be worried. Every Delta operator was a weapon, trained to turn any situation to their advantage. Marcus had escaped facilities in hostile territory with far less to work with than this. The convoy's engines rumbled to life. Through the window, Marcus watched the detention facility recede. They thought they were moving a prisoner to a more secure location. Instead, they were giving him exactly what he needed: a chance. He studied the guards' positions, the way they held their weapons, how often they checked their radios. Every detail was a potential tool, every pattern a possible opening. His expression remained neutral, but his mind was fully engaged, preparing for what would come next. The convoy moved through the city streets, its heavy armor and armed escort drawing stares from civilians. Marcus felt the vehicle's vibrations, timing the intervals between turns. He noticed one guard's vest wasn't properly secured. Another's radio was set to the wrong frequency. Small mistakes that would matter soon enough. The armored transport swayed as it navigated the city streets. Marcus sat quietly, chains rattling softly with each bump and turn. 4 guards watched him, 2 on each side, rifles ready. Their initial tension had given way to casual arrogance. "Not so tough now, are you?" Private Wilson sneered, nudging Marcus with his boot. "Just another thug in camo pants." "Bet he bought those pants at the Army surplus store," Corporal Hayes added, trying to play soldier. Marcus kept his eyes forward, expression neutral, but his mind was racing, cataloging every detail. The way Wilson's rifle strap was too loose, how Hayes kept checking his phone despite regulations, the growing congestion on the roads as they approached downtown. "Hey, you hear me, tough guy?" Wilson kicked harder this time. "Or did we knock the fight out of you?" Marcus finally turned to him, his gaze steady. "Touch me again," he said quietly, "and you'll find out." The other guards laughed, but Wilson's hand tightened on his weapon. He'd seen the security footage of what happened to Miller and O'Connor. The laughter died as traffic slowed to a crawl. "What's the holdup?" Hayes radioed the lead vehicle. "Construction ahead," came the crackled response. "Merging lanes. 5-minute delay. Minimum." Marcus felt the transport's speed drop. Perfect. He'd been working on his restraints since they left the facility, slowly creating microscopic space in the cuffs mechanism. Now, as Wilson shifted his weight to keep balance in the slowing vehicle, Marcus made his move. The chains snapped free with a sharp crack. Before anyone could react, Marcus grabbed Wilson's rifle, yanking him forward. Wilson's head slammed into the metal wall with brutal force. He crumpled, unconscious. "Contact!" Hayes shouted, raising his weapon. But the confined space worked against him. Marcus was already inside his guard, driving an elbow into his throat. Hayes gagged, fingers squeezing the trigger. Bullets sparked off the ceiling. The other two guards tried to bring their rifles to bear, but Marcus was moving like liquid violence. He kicked the weapon from the first guard's hands, then used Hayes as a human shield when the second guard fired. Hayes screamed as rounds meant for Marcus tore into his vest. Marcus threw Hayes aside, closing the distance. His hands found familiar holds, pressure points, joint locks, the brutal efficiency of close-quarters combat. The guard's arm snapped at the elbow. His scream was cut short by a precise strike to the temple. The last guard dropped his rifle, drawing a combat knife. "Stay back!" Marcus almost smiled. The knife slashed through empty air as he stepped inside the guard's reach. His fingers found nerve clusters in the man's wrist and shoulder. The knife clattered to the floor. A quick series of strikes left the guard unconscious, joining his companions on the transport's floor. The driver was shouting into his radio, trying to maintain control as the vehicle swerved. Marcus grabbed the knife, moving toward the cabin. But before he reached it, the transport slammed into something hard. Metal screamed. The world spun. Marcus braced himself as the vehicle crashed into the concrete divider. The impact threw him against the wall, but his training took over. He rolled with the force, protecting his vital areas. The transport skidded to a stop, smoke pouring from its engine. Alarms blared. Marcus could hear the other convoy vehicles screeching to a halt, boots hitting pavement. He had seconds. The cabin door was jammed from the crash. He kicked it twice, metal groaning, then a third time. It burst open. The driver hung limply in his harness, alive but dazed. Marcus pulled him clear, laying him on the floor. No need for more violence. He could hear shouting outside, guards organizing a perimeter. Blood ran down Marcus's arm from where the crash had opened a gash. His ribs screamed protest as he moved, probably bruised. But pain was an old friend to Delta operators. He pushed it aside, focusing on escape. The transport's rear doors would be covered. But the crash had crumpled the side panel, creating a gap. Marcus squeezed through, metal edges tearing his shirt. He dropped to the pavement just as flashlights swept the area. "Check the vehicle! Watch the perimeter! He's armed and dangerous!" Marcus stayed low, using the smoke and confusion to his advantage. He moved like a shadow between vehicles, his movements precise despite his injuries. A guard turned, catching a glimpse of him. But before he could shout a warning, Marcus was gone. Sirens wailed in the distance. Marcus limped into a dark alley, blood dripping from his arm. Behind him, the night erupted with activity. Radios crackling, helicopters approaching, the full might of the National Guard mobilizing to find him. But Marcus had disappeared into similar nights in countries around the world. Urban escape and evasion were part of his DNA. He melted into the darkness as naturally as breathing. leaving only questions and unconscious guards in his wake. The alarms continued to blare, their sound fading as Marcus put distance between himself and the crash site. Each step sent pain through his ribs, but he pushed on. He wasn't just running from the guard now. He was running toward something bigger. The truth about the crackdown, the political conspiracy, and justice for his community. Behind him, searchlights cut through the smoke rising from the wrecked transport. But they illuminated only shadows. Marcus Steele, Delta Force commander, was free, and he had work to do. Marcus limped through familiar streets, his arms still bleeding. Every shadow held potential danger, but he knew this neighborhood like the back of his hand. The same corners where he'd played as a kid now served as tactical cover points. His military training merged with childhood memories, guiding him home. A group of teenagers huddled on a stoop spotted him first. Their eyes widened with recognition. "Yo, that's him," one whispered loudly. "The soldier from the videos. The one who took down those guards." Marcus pressed a finger to his lips, and they immediately quieted. But their excitement spread like wildfire through the neighborhood's informal communication network. Windows lit up. Curtains twitched. Doors opened just enough for people to peek out. He stumbled slightly, the pain in his ribs intensifying. Blood dripped steadily from his arm, leaving a trail he'd need to clean up. The world started to spin slightly, blood loss and exhaustion taking their toll. "Marcus! Over here!" A familiar voice cut through his haze. Mrs. Evelyn Carter stood in her doorway, her usual warm demeanor replaced by urgent concern. "Quickly now!" He crossed the street in a crouch, years of combat experience keeping him in the shadows. Mrs. Carter ushered him inside, closing the door quietly behind them. The house smelled like it always did, fresh bread and lavender, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. "Lord have mercy. Look at you," she muttered, examining his wounds. "Come on. The others are waiting downstairs." "Others?" She led him to her basement door. "You didn't think we'd just sit idle while they hunted you, did you?" The basement was dimly lit, but full of people, community leaders, local activists, and concerned citizens. They'd transformed the space into an impromptu command center, with maps of the neighborhood pinned to walls and phones broadcasting police scanner frequencies. Darius D.J. Johnson jumped up from his laptop as Marcus entered. The young activist's eyes shone with admiration and barely contained energy. "Holy shit, it's really you! Man, those moves you pulled on the guards? Pure fire!" "Language," Mrs. Carter scolded, but there was no heat in it. She was already gathering first aid supplies. Reverend Williams, from the Baptist church 3 blocks over, helped Marcus to a chair. "We've been monitoring the guards' movements. They've got checkpoints on all major roads, but they're spread thin in the residential areas." Marcus nodded, wincing as Mrs. Carter cleaned his arm wound. "They'll tighten the net by morning." We need to fight back," Darius interrupted, pacing with nervous energy. "People are tired of being pushed around. Your videos got everyone fired up. We could organize." "Not with hot heads and cold planning," Marcus cut him off, but his tone was gentle. "That's exactly what they want. An excuse for more violence." The basement fell quiet, except for the crackle of police scanners. Mrs. Carter finished bandaging Marcus's arm and handed him water and painkillers. Around the room, people began sharing their stories. Mr. Washington, who owned the local hardware store, described being forced to the ground at gunpoint while guards searched his shop. Sarah Chen, a college student, talked about soldiers harassing her grandmother's restaurant, claiming to check permits. Each story carried the same thread: systematic intimidation, racial profiling, abuse of power. "They tried to search my classroom," Mrs. Carter added softly, her hands clasped tight. children crying, while men with guns went through their backpacks. Called it a safety inspection. Marcus absorbed each account, his jaw tightening. The tactical part of his brain was already forming plans, but these weren't enemy combatants in some foreign land. These were his people, his home. Darius sat next to him, voice lower now. I've been documenting everything, building a network online. People are ready to stand up. They just need direction. Need someone who knows how to fight smart. Marcus studied the young man. Behind the fierce energy, he saw something familiar. The same fire he'd had at that age, the same need to right wrongs. But Darius had something he hadn't: digital savvy and a genuine gift for organizing. Show me what you've got, Marcus said. For the next hour, Darius walked him through their grassroots network. Local businesses providing safe houses, teenagers running counter-surveillance on guard patrols, encrypted messaging channels coordinating legal aid. The community hadn't been passive. They'd been preparing. The basement hummed with quiet activity. Reverend Williams coordinated with other churches. Mr. Washington sketched patrol patterns he'd observed. Mrs. Carter made calls to teachers, building a list of incidents and witnesses. As midnight approached, exhaustion finally caught up with Marcus. The painkillers made his thoughts fuzzy. Mrs. Carter noticed immediately and started shooing people out. "Rest now," she insisted, setting up a cot in the corner. "You're no good to anyone if you collapse." The basement slowly emptied, leaving only essential lookouts. Darius lingered, still bursting with questions, until Mrs. Carter gave him her signature teacher's stare. He left reluctantly, promising to return at dawn. Marcus lay down, his body aching but his mind racing. Above, he could hear helicopters circling, their searchlights sweeping the streets. The basement's quiet activity continued. Whispered plans, tapped keyboards, scrolling phones. These weren't soldiers, but they were warriors in their own right, fighting with information and organization instead of weapons. He drifted toward uneasy sleep, lulled by the familiar sounds of his community preparing to resist. The last thing he heard was Mrs. Carter, humming softly. An old civil rights song she'd taught him years ago, its melody carrying the weight of history and hope. Marcus jerked awake at the sound of 3 soft taps on the basement window. A Delta Force recognition signal. His body tensed, ready for action despite the lingering pain. The lookouts had already moved into defensive positions, but Marcus waved them down. "I know that knock," he whispered. Through the narrow window, he caught a glimpse of a familiar face. Captain Miguel Torres, his old Delta Force teammate, crouched in the shadows. Marcus hadn't seen him in 2 years, not since their last mission in Eastern Europe. "Mrs." Carter watched from her chair, knitting needles paused mid-stitch, as Marcus quietly opened the window. Torres slipped in with the fluid grace of a trained operator, landing without a sound. The 2 men stood facing each other for a moment. Torres looked exactly as Marcus remembered. Sharp features, calculating eyes, and that hint of a smile that could either charm or threaten. His civilian clothes were expensive but practical, a far cry from their combat gear days. "Brother," Torres said softly, pulling Marcus into a tight embrace. "When I saw the videos, I couldn't believe it. Had to come myself." Marcus returned the hug, noting how Torres still carried himself with that slight leftward lean, an old habit from a shoulder wound they'd both earned in the same firefight. The familiar gesture made his throat tight with memories. "It's good to see you, Miguel." Marcus stepped back, gesturing to the others. "This is Mrs. Carter. She's your second mother. I remember the stories." Torres smiled warmly at her. "Ma'am, your boy here saved my life 3 times. 4, Marcus corrected. "You forgot Azerbaijan." "That one doesn't count. I had it under control." The RPG 2 feet from your head said different. They shared a laugh, but it faded quickly as Torres's expression turned serious. He glanced at the lookouts, then back to Marcus. We need to talk. Privately. Mrs. Carter stood up. Use the back room. I'll keep watch. The back room was barely more than a storage closet. Walls lined with preserved food and emergency supplies. Marcus closed the door, leaving just enough space for the dim light to filter in. Torres immediately dropped his casual demeanor. You're enemy number one now, Marcus. They're painting you as a domestic terrorist, claiming you're leading some kind of militant uprising. Torres ran a hand through his hair. Another old gesture Marcus remembered from tense missions. Every agency has your photo. They're mobilizing everything they've got. Let them come, Marcus said. But Torres shook his head. You don't understand. This goes way beyond some racist cops or overzealous guard units. This whole crackdown, it's staged, orchestrated. Torres lowered his voice further. Harlow's just a puppet. There are people in Washington, powerful people, who want chaos in the streets. Marcus leaned against a shelf, processing. Why? Martial law. They're manufacturing a crisis to justify federal intervention. Once they have that, they can suspend civil rights, delay elections, whatever they want. Torres pulled out his phone, showing Marcus classified documents. Look at these orders. The targeting parameters, the escalation protocols. It's all designed to provoke a response. Marcus studied the documents, his military training helping him spot the telltale signs. The mission parameters were too specific, the engagement rules too loose. This wasn't crowd control. It was provocation. How did you get this? Still have friends in intelligence. They're worried, Marcus. This could spread nationwide. Other cities are watching, waiting to see if this playbook works. Torres put his phone away. You're the wild card they didn't expect. A decorated Delta Force commander? With combat experience and community support? You could expose the whole operation. Marcus thought of Darius and his network, of Mrs. Carter and her teachers, of all the people in the basement fighting back in their own ways. That's why they're so desperate to take me down. Exactly. Harlow's getting pressure from above. He has to either capture you or… Torres let the sentence hang. The implications were clear. Marcus had seen similar operations overseas. Create chaos, provoke resistance, then crush it with overwhelming force. But seeing it deployed against his own community made his blood boil. I won't let them succeed, Marcus said, his voice hard. I know. That's why I'm here. Torres gripped Marcus's shoulder. You taught me that sometimes the hardest fights are the ones closest to home. Let me help you take these bastards down. Marcus studied his old friend's face. Something flickered in Torres's eyes. An emotion Marcus couldn't quite read. Maybe it was just the poor lighting, or the stress of the situation. But after years of combat together, of trusting each other with their lives, Marcus pushed the doubt aside. I could use another operator, he admitted. Especially one who knows how they think. Torres smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Like old times, brother. We'll show them what happens when they push too far. They emerged from the back room to find Mrs. Carter had made coffee. She handed them both cups without a word, but her sharp eyes studied Torres carefully. Marcus recognized her teacher's instinct for spotting trouble, but right now he needed allies more than caution. Your man here has intel, Marcus told the room. We need to adjust our plans. Torres sat down at the planning table, already pulling out more documents. First thing we need to do is understand their command structure. Harlow's vulnerable if we know where to hit. Marcus watched his old friend begin outlining strategies, sharing inside information that could turn the tide. He ignored the tiny voice of doubt in his mind, focusing instead on the chance to strike back effectively. Sometimes, he told himself, You had to trust in old bonds forged in combat. But Mrs. Carter kept knitting, her needles clicking softly as she watched Torres with unblinking eyes. Marcus stood in the basement's open space, watching as Darius and 20 other young men mirrored his stance. Their movements were rough, unpolished, but their determination burned bright in their eyes. "Control your breathing," Marcus instructed, demonstrating a defensive position. "Your body follows your breath. Panic breathing leads to panic thinking." He moved slowly, letting them see how each muscle shifted. "This isn't about fighting. It's about surviving. About keeping your head when they try to make you lose it." Darius copied the stance perfectly, his athletic frame adapting quickly to the training. The others followed, some wobbling, others stronger. Marcus walked among them, adjusting postures with gentle but firm hands. "Remember," he continued, "they want you to react with anger, to give them an excuse. Your discipline is your shield." In the corner, Mrs. Carter sat in her usual chair, her presence lending gravity to the training. She watched with teacher's eyes, noting how Marcus balanced military precision with community understanding. "That's right," she added, her voice carrying decades of wisdom. "Same as in my classroom. They push you to break, but you rise above it. Show them your dignity." Marcus nodded, grateful for her words. She knew how to bridge the gap between his tactical knowledge and their daily struggles. Together, they were forging something new, resistance wrapped in righteousness. "Again," Marcus commanded, "from the beginning." They moved through the sequences: how to stand when confronted, how to protect vital areas, how to disengage safely. Marcus had stripped down his Delta Force training to its essentials, adapting military techniques for civilian defense. Darius caught on fastest, his youthful energy tempered by Marcus's guidance. "Like this?" he asked, demonstrating a deflection move. "Good," Marcus approved. "But slower. Smooth is fast. Fast is smooth." Outside, someone's phone captured the training through the window. Marcus let it happen. This wasn't about secrecy anymore. Let them see. Let them know that resistance had structure, had discipline. After the physical training, Mrs. Carter took center stage. The group sat in a circle as she spoke, her words weaving through Marcus's tactical lessons. "We've walked this road before," she said, her voice strong despite her age. "When they brought dogs to our protests, we didn't run. When they turned hoses on our children, we didn't break. Now they bring soldiers to our streets. But our dignity remains undefeated." Marcus watched the younger faces absorb her words. This was the other half of the training: the steel in their spines, the fire in their hearts. Mrs. Carter knew how to kindle it without letting it burn out of control. "Marcus teaches you how to stand," she continued. "I'm teaching you why we stand. Together, we show them that their force cannot break our spirit." Someone was live-streaming her speech. The comments scrolled rapidly. Hearts, fists, words of support flooding in from across the city, across the country. Their message was spreading. Across town, in the National Guard Command Center, Sergeant Linda Kane sat alone in the break room, her phone hidden under the table. She watched the live stream, saw the dignity in the resistance, the control in their training. Her chest felt tight with conflicting loyalties. The door opened, and she quickly pocketed her phone, but not before catching Mrs. Carter's final words. "They expect us to be either passive or violent. We will be neither. We will be righteous." Back in the basement, Marcus ended the training session with a final demonstration. He and Darius stood facing each other, showing how defense could deflect aggression without escalating. "They strike high, you stay low," Marcus instructed, moving through the sequence slowly. "They push, you redirect. They escalate, you maintain control." Darius followed perfectly, his movements now fluid and purposeful. The others watched, recording, learning. This wasn't just training anymore, it was transformation. Later that evening, Marcus stood at the edge of a growing crowd. What had started as a small gathering had swelled to hundreds. They filled the street, phones held high, voices raised in unified chants. "Steal! Steal! Steal!" His name had become more than just a name. It was a symbol of disciplined defiance. Marcus felt the weight of it, the responsibility. He saw Mrs. Carter's teachings and his training merged in the crowd's controlled energy. Young men stood in the defensive stances he'd taught them, facing the police line without fear or aggression. Others live-streamed everything, ensuring the world watched. The whole scene was a testament to their combined strategy: power under control, resistance with dignity. Darius worked the crowd like a natural leader, his phone broadcasting to thousands. "Show them!" he called out. "Show them what Commander Steele taught us." The crowd moved in unison, demonstrating the defensive stances. It was beautiful and terrible. Hundreds of citizens having to learn military techniques just to survive in their own streets. But they did it with such grace, such dignity. "Steal! Steal! Steal!" The chant grew louder, echoing off buildings. Marcus felt hope rising in his chest, powerful and dangerous. He saw it in their faces, not just anger, not just defiance, but disciplined determination. They were learning to stand their ground without losing their souls. Mrs. Carter appeared beside him, her hand finding his arm. "Look at what you've built," she said softly. "Not soldiers, citizens, standing tall." Marcus watched as more people joined the crowd, their phones adding to the sea of lights. The live stream numbers kept climbing. Their message was reaching beyond the city now, inspiring others to stand up, to resist with dignity. The chants continued, his name carrying their hopes for justice. For a moment, standing there with Mrs. Carter, watching Darius lead the crowd in disciplined protest, Marcus allowed himself to believe they might actually win. Marcus stood at the front of the massive crowd, their energy electric in the evening air. Thousands had gathered, filling the wide street from curb to curb. Signs waved above their heads, phones live-streamed from every angle, and their unified chants echoed off the buildings. Torres appeared at his side, dressed in civilian clothes, his familiar presence both comforting and commanding. "You need to lead from the front, brother," he said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. "Show them you're not afraid." Marcus nodded, studying the empty street ahead. Something felt off. The police barriers were too far back, the usual line of riot cops mysteriously absent. His combat instincts tingled, but Torres's confident smile made him push the doubts aside. "The whole world is watching," Torres continued, gesturing at the forest of phones. "Make it count." Darius jogged up, excitement burning in his eyes. "Commander, we've got over 50,000 watching the live stream." He held up his phone, showing the numbers climbing. Mrs. Carter's voice cut through the crowd's roar. "Marcus, wait!" She was trying to reach them, moving as fast as her age allowed, but the sea of bodies kept her back. Torres gently pushed Marcus forward. "Time to move. They're waiting for their leader." The crowd surged with him as Marcus stepped out, their chants growing louder. He walked with military precision, head high, showing the dignity they'd practiced. Behind him, thousands moved in formation, using the defensive stances he'd taught them. The first warning came from above, the police helicopters suddenly pulling back, leaving an eerie quiet in the sky. Marcus's combat senses screamed danger, but before he could act, the trap snapped shut. National Guard units poured out from side streets on both sides, their rifles raised. Armored vehicles crashed through shop fronts, cutting off escape routes. The ambush was perfectly coordinated, catching the crowd in a deadly crossfire. Marcus spun to Torres, reaching for his former brother-in-arms, and found himself staring into the barrel of a pistol. Torres' friendly smile had twisted into something cruel and mocking. "Sorry, old friend," Torres said, not sounding sorry at all. "But orders are orders." The first shots cracked overhead, rubber bullets and tear gas canisters arcing into the crowd. Screams replaced chants as chaos erupted. People ran in panic, trampling each other, while guard units advanced with batons swinging. Marcus moved without thinking, his body responding to years of training. He slapped Torres's gun aside and drove a knee into his solar plexus. But Torres had trained with him. He rolled with the hit, backing away as guard soldiers opened fire. A rubber bullet caught Marcus in the ribs, stealing his breath. Another grazed his temple, sending him stumbling. Through blurring vision, he saw Darius trying to organize an escape route, using the defensive techniques to help others break free. "Get them out!" Marcus shouted, his voice nearly lost in the chaos. He turned to face the advancing soldiers, buying time for civilians to flee. The fight that followed was brutal and desperate. Marcus used every trick he'd learned in Delta Force, but he was one man against an army. He disarmed 2 guards, used their own weapons to block shots from others, and left a trail of groaning soldiers in his wake. But they kept coming. A baton caught him across the back, driving him to one knee. Tear gas burned his eyes and throat. Through the chemical haze, he saw Torres standing with Colonel Harlow, both men watching the carnage with satisfaction. "Take him alive!" Harlow ordered, his voice carrying over the chaos. "I want him to see what happens to his precious movement." Mrs. Carter's voice rang out somewhere in the madness. "Marcus! This way!" She'd found a path through a building, helping people escape. The sight of her, this elderly teacher standing brave amid the violence, gave Marcus a surge of strength. He fought toward her voice, using the crowd's panic to his advantage. His ribs screamed with every movement. Blood ran into his eyes from the head wound, but he kept moving. Years of combat experience guided him through the chaos. A fresh wave of tear gas separated him from the crowd. Through streaming eyes, Marcus saw guard units dragging people into trucks, including Darius, still fighting even as they beat him. The live stream phones lay scattered and broken on the ground, their screens dark. Something hard struck Marcus from behind. A rifle butt or baton, he couldn't tell. He stumbled into an alley, every breath like fire in his chest. More shots followed, forcing him deeper into the maze of side streets. He found temporary shelter in a burned-out building, pressing himself against a wall as guard patrols rushed past. Blood soaked his shirt, his head throbbed, and each breath sent daggers through his ribs. But he was alive. Through a broken window, Marcus watched Torres and Harlow survey their victory. Torres was laughing, accepting congratulations from other officers. The sound carried clearly through the now quiet streets. "Textbook operation," Torres said, holstering his pistol. "They never saw it coming." "Good work, Captain," Harlow replied, his voice thick with satisfaction. This should break their spirit completely. Marcus slid down the wall, his legs finally giving out. The movement lay in ruins, supporters arrested, leaders captured, trust shattered. All because he'd been blind to Torres's betrayal, deaf to his own instincts that had warned him something was wrong. In the distance, sirens wailed and helicopters returned. The sounds of the crackdown filled the night as guard units went building to building, hunting for stragglers. Marcus pressed deeper into the shadows, his breath ragged, watching his former friend walk away with the enemy. Marcus huddled in the darkened building, each breath sending spikes of pain through his ribs. Blood had dried on his temple, making his skin feel tight and itchy. Through gaps in the burned walls, he watched National Guard patrols sweep the streets with flashlights and rifles. His hands shook as he examined the bruises spreading across his chest. Every mark felt like an accusation, proof of his failure. He'd led those people into a trap. Their trust in him had gotten them arrested, beaten, maybe worse. "I should have known," he whispered to the darkness. "Should have seen it coming." Torres's betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Years of fighting side by side in Delta Force, sharing foxholes and combat missions, all of it meant nothing. The memory of his old friend's mocking smile made Marcus's stomach turn. A helicopter passed low overhead, its searchlight beam cutting through broken windows. Marcus pressed himself flatter against the wall, wincing as his injuries protested. The light swept past, but he stayed frozen, wondering if surrender might be the only way to stop more people from getting hurt. "I know that look," a familiar voice said softly. "That's the look of a man about to do something foolish." Mrs. Carter emerged from the shadows like a ghost, moving carefully through the debris. Her usually neat clothes were dusty, and a small cut marked her cheek, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "Mrs. Carter," Marcus tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't cooperate. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe. Nowhere's safe tonight." She knelt beside him, pulling medical supplies from her bag. "But I'm exactly where I need to be." Her hands were gentle but firm as she cleaned the cut on his temple. Marcus noticed scratches on her knuckles, evidence that the retired teacher had fought back during the chaos. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "All those people trusted me, followed me, and I led them right into—" "Stop that right now." Mrs. Carter's tone was the same one she'd used on unruly students for 40 years. "You didn't lead anyone into anything. Those people chose to stand up. You gave them the courage and the tools to do it right." She wrapped bandages around his ribs, her movements practiced. Marcus remembered she'd been a field nurse before becoming a teacher. "Torres played me," Marcus said, "used my trust against me, and everyone paid the price." "That's what evil does," Mrs. Carter replied. "It uses good people's best qualities against them. Your trust wasn't weakness, his betrayal was." She finished bandaging him and sat back, studying his face. "You know what this reminds me of? Montgomery, 1965. I was just a girl, watching Dr. King march. The police turned dogs and fire hoses on us, beat us bloody. Many wanted to quit then, too." Marcus looked up, seeing the steel in her eyes. "What happened?" "We came back stronger. Because that's what justice does. It rises. Evil can win a battle, but it never wins the war." She touched his shoulder gently. "Heroes don't retire when their people still need saving." The words hit Marcus like a physical force. He remembered why he'd joined Delta Force, not for glory or adventure, but to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. That mission hadn't ended with his service. "The people they arrested," he said slowly. "They'll be held at the Guard's command center. The old courthouse building." Mrs. Carter smiled. "Now, that sounds more like the Marcus Steele I know." She helped him stand, supporting him until his legs steadied. In a corner of the room, a broken mirror hung crookedly on the wall. Marcus caught his reflection. Battered, bloody, but somehow not beaten. "We'll need supplies," he said, his tactical mind already working. "And I'll need armor." Mrs. Carter's bag yielded more than medical supplies. She'd brought pieces of riot gear, salvaged from downed Guard soldiers during the chaos. "Some of the younger folks grabbed what they could," she explained. "Been collecting it all night." Marcus examined each piece carefully. The armor wasn't military grade, but it would help. He strapped on the chest piece first, testing how it affected his movement. The familiar weight of tactical gear helped clear his mind. "Darius and the others," he said, securing arm guards. "They're counting on us." "On you," Mrs. Carter corrected. "They believe in you, Marcus." Not because you're unbeatable, but because you never stop fighting for what's right. She helped him adjust the straps, her movements reminding him of his mother preparing him for school so many years ago. The thought brought a sudden lump to his throat. "I won't let them down again," he promised. "You never did." Mrs. Carter stepped back, examining her work. "Now you look like what you always were, a warrior for justice." Marcus turned to the broken mirror again. The man staring back was transformed. Despite the bruises, despite the pain, his eyes burned with renewed purpose. The makeshift armor wasn't pretty, but it would serve. He thought of Torres and Harlow, probably celebrating their victory right now. They believed they'd broken the movement, crushed its spirit. They had no idea what was coming. Mrs. Carter handed him the final piece, a tactical vest with extra pockets. "The others are waiting for your signal," she said. "When you're ready." Marcus strapped on the vest, checking each fastening with practiced precision. In the mirror, he looked like what he truly was, not just a Delta Force commander, but a defender of his people. The armor felt right, like coming home to his true purpose. Marcus pressed himself against the cold brick wall of the courthouse, now Colonel Harlow's command center. The night air carried a chill that made his bruised ribs ache, but he pushed the pain aside. Years of Delta Force training had taught him to compartmentalize discomfort. From his hidden position across the street, he studied the building's defenses through compact binoculars. 4 guards at the main entrance, 2 patrolling each side, and snipers on the roof. Standard military formation, but sloppy. These weren't seasoned combat troops. They were weekend warriors drunk on power. He checked his watch. 2:47 a.m. The guard rotation would happen at 3 prigs. Marcus had memorized their patterns over the last hour. The lazy cigarette breaks, the predictable patrol routes, the blind spots in their security camera coverage. Amateur mistakes that would cost them dearly. A figure emerged from the side door. Sergeant Linda Kane, starting her medical supply run. Their eyes met briefly across the darkness. She gave no sign of recognition, but her path deliberately created a 30-second gap in the western perimeter coverage. Marcus moved like a shadow, years of covert operations flowing through his muscles. The makeshift armor misses. Carter had given him didn't creak or rattle. He'd padded every joint with cloth. He reached the building's shadow just as Kane disappeared around the corner. 2 guards stood by the side entrance, rifles held lazily. Marcus heard them complaining about the cold, their attention focused on their discomfort rather than their surroundings. He pulled a small stone from his pocket and tossed it into some nearby bushes. "What was that?" The younger guard stepped forward, peering into the darkness. "Probably just a cat," his partner said, but moved to check anyway. Marcus struck the moment they separated. His hand clamped over the first guard's mouth, cutting off any sound as he applied precise pressure to the carotid artery. The guard slumped unconscious within seconds. The second guard turned just in time to meet Marcus's elbow. A clean strike that dropped him without a sound. He dragged both bodies into the shadows, securing them with their own zip ties. Their radio squawked. "West entrance, check in." Marcus keyed the radio, perfectly mimicking the younger guard's voice. West entrance clear. Another Delta Force skill. Voice manipulation had saved his life more than once. Inside the building, fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Marcus moved carefully, using his memory of the courthouse layout from previous visits. The holding cells would be in the basement. That's where they'd keep Darius and the other protesters. A guard rounded the corner, and Marcus melted into an alcove. The guard passed within inches, never noticing the shadow that slipped behind him. A quick chokehold, another body hidden in a supply closet. Marcus collected what he needed from the unconscious guard: key card, radio, and a more complete set of tactical gear. The guard's sidearm went into Marcus's holster. He preferred not to use lethal force, but he wouldn't hesitate if necessary. The sound of boots on marble made him freeze. A patrol of 4 guards marched past his position, heading for the stairs. Marcus waited until their footsteps faded, then followed. The stairwell's concrete walls amplified every sound, forcing him to move with excruciating slowness. On the 2nd floor, he encountered Sergeant Kane again. She was checking medical supplies in a storage room, her back to the door. Without turning, she spoke quietly. "Security camera blind spot lasts 20 seconds. Harlow's in the command center on the 3rd floor, East Wing. He has 6 personal guards." Marcus moved past silently, acknowledging her help with the lightest touch on her shoulder. She'd risk court-martial if caught helping him, but her conscience wouldn't let her support Harlow's corrupt operation. The 3rd floor was better guarded. Marcus counted 8 men in the hallway leading to the command center. Taking them head-on would be suicide. He needed a diversion. The building's old maintenance shaft provided an alternative route. Marcus climbed carefully, using techniques honed in urban warfare training. His injured ribs screamed in protest, but he didn't slow down. The shaft opened into a ventilation room overlooking the main hallway. Perfect timing. Kane had started her diversion. An argument erupted at the far end of the hall about missing medical supplies. 4 guards moved to investigate, leaving the approach to the command center exposed. Marcus dropped silently behind the remaining guards. The first never knew what hit him, a precise strike to the base of the skull. The second managed to half-turn before Marcus's elbow connected with his temple. Both dropped without raising the alarm. He dragged them quickly into the ventilation room, then moved toward the command center. The heavy wooden doors were reinforced with steel, typical courthouse architecture. 2 guards remained, standing alert with automatic weapons. Marcus removed a small canister from his vest, a homemade smoke device courtesy of Mrs. Carter's chemistry knowledge. He rolled it quietly down the hall. When it activated, the guards tensed but held position, unable to abandon their post. Their discipline worked against them. Marcus moved through the smoke like a ghost, his strikes precise and devastating. The first guard's rifle clattered to the floor as he fell. The second managed to click his radio once before Marcus took him down, but no words were transmitted. The smoke thinned, revealing the ornate doors of the command center. Marcus could hear voices inside. Harlow's distinctive bark giving orders, probably coordinating the ongoing crackdown. The colonel had no idea his fortress had been penetrated. Marcus checked his weapons one final time. The weight of his gathered arsenal felt reassuring. Zip ties, smoke canisters, the guard's sidearm, and most importantly, the small camera Mrs. Carter had given him. Everything he needed to expose Harlow's corruption and free his people. He crouched at the threshold, muscles coiled like springs. Through the door, he heard Harlow laughing about teaching those troublemakers a lesson. Marcus's jaw tightened. The time for stealth was over. Marcus surged forward, driving his shoulder into the heavy doors. They burst open with a thunderous crash, startling the soldiers inside. 2 guards reached for their weapons, but Marcus was already moving. He hurled a filing cabinet drawer like a discus, catching the first guard in the chest and sending him sprawling. The second guard managed to squeeze off a shot that whizzed past Marcus's ear. Marcus closed the distance in 3 rapid steps, deflecting the rifle barrel upward. The guard's next shot punctured the ceiling as Marcus executed a perfect hip throw, slamming him into a desk that splintered under the impact. "Intruder on 3rd floor!" someone shouted into a radio. Boots thundered in the hallway as reinforcements rushed toward the command center. Marcus grabbed a fallen guard's rifle and spun to face the doorway. The first soldier through caught a rifle butt to the face, teeth scattering across the floor. The second tried to bring his weapon to bear, but Marcus was already inside his guard. A savage elbow strike crushed the man's larynx. More soldiers poured in. Marcus moved like water between them, each motion flowing into the next. A knee strike shattered one guard's ribs. An armbar snapped another's elbow. He used their own momentum against them, turning their attacks into opportunities for devastating counters. A soldier managed to get Marcus in a chokehold. Marcus dropped his weight, breaking the hold, then reversed position. The soldier flew through the air, crashing into two of his companions. All three went down in a tangle of limbs and equipment. Someone had started live streaming the fight on their phone. Comments and likes flooded the feed as viewers watched Marcus systematically dismantle the National Guard's elite security force. Each brutal takedown drew cheers and supportive messages. "That's for Darius!" Marcus growled, driving his knee into a guard's solar plexus. The man doubled over, gasping. "This is for Mrs. Carter!" A perfect uppercut lifted another soldier off his feet. The fighting spilled into the hallway. Marcus used the narrow space to his advantage, preventing the soldiers from surrounding him. He grabbed one guard's tactical vest and used him as a human shield, advancing through a hail of rubber bullets. A flash-bang grenade bounced off the wall. Marcus kicked it back before it could detonate. The explosion lit up the corridor, stunning three more guards. He moved through the chaos like a force of nature, leaving broken bodies and shattered equipment in his wake. A soldier tried to radio for more backup. Marcus silenced him with a throat strike, then used the radio to broadcast a message. This is what happens when you abuse power. The people fight back. The livestream's view count soared. Civilians watching from home saw Marcus grab a fire extinguisher from the wall. He sprayed it in a wide arc, creating a cloud of white powder that confused and disoriented the remaining guards. Through the haze, they could only see shadows of Marcus systematically eliminating their companions. "He's unstoppable," someone commented, as Marcus used a guard's riot shield to ram three soldiers into a wall. The impact left a person-shaped dent in the drywall. Marcus spotted a familiar face among the guards. Private Miller, one of the men who'd first harassed him on the street. Miller raised his hands in surrender, but Marcus wasn't feeling merciful. A lightning-fast combination of strikes left Miller unconscious, his nose definitely broken. The hallway became an obstacle course of groaning bodies and discarded weapons. Marcus moved through it with practiced efficiency, disarming tripwires and avoiding obvious ambush points. His Delta Force training had prepared him for exactly this type of close-quarters combat. A squad tried to trap him at an intersection, attacking from multiple angles. Marcus dropped and rolled, coming up with two riot batons. The weapons became extensions of his arms as he parried attacks and delivered crushing blows. Bones snapped. Bodies fell. The squad's coordinated assault dissolved into panic. "This is better than any action movie," someone commented on the live stream. The video had gone viral, with thousands watching Marcus prove why Delta Force operators were considered the world's elite warriors. He used everything at his disposal: fire hoses to create slippery conditions, door frames as improvised weapons, even a mail cart as a battering ram. Each improvisation demonstrated years of combat experience and creative problem-solving under pressure. The last group of regular guards made their stand outside the main command center. They had overturned desks for cover and aimed a variety of weapons at the approaching Marcus. Their hands shook as they watched him stalk toward them, covered in powder from the fire extinguisher, looking like an avenging ghost. "Last chance to walk away," Marcus offered. They responded with a barrage of fire. Marcus dove and rolled, coming up inside their perimeter. His strikes were economical and devastating. An elbow that crushed a nose, a knee that shattered a kneecap, a palm strike that ruptured an eardrum. The guard's superior numbers meant nothing against his skill and experience. The final guard tried to run. Marcus caught him with a thrown stapler that knocked him cold. The hallway fell silent, except for the groans of the defeated soldiers and the steady drip of water from the broken fire hose. Marcus paused to catch his breath, his ribs aching from the exertion. The live stream showed his face, determined and focused. He checked his equipment one last time, making sure the camera was still recording. Through the command center's doors, he could hear Colonel Harlow barking orders. With calm precision, Marcus reloaded his captured weapons. He secured his makeshift armor, tightening straps that had come loose during the fighting. The live stream's comment section exploded with encouragement as he approached the final doors. Marcus took a deep breath, centered himself, and kicked the doors open. Inside, Colonel Harlow stood waiting in full combat gear, surrounded by his personal security detail. The real battle was about to begin. Colonel Harlow stood in his combat gear, a sneer twisting his face. His personal security detail, 6 elite soldiers, formed a protective ring around him. The command center's screens flickered with surveillance footage, showing the trail of unconscious bodies Marcus had left behind. "The famous Marcus Steele," Harlow spat. "Delta Force's golden boy, turned race traitor. Look what you've become, fighting your own country's soldiers." Marcus stepped forward, his boots crunching on broken glass. "The only traitor here is you, Harlow. Using the National Guard to terrorize civilians? That's not protecting the country. That's tyranny. Get him," Harlow ordered his men. But Marcus was ready. He caught the first guard's punch and used the man's momentum to throw him into 2 others. The remaining 3 attacked simultaneously. Marcus ducked under a wild swing, swept one guard's legs, and drove his elbow into another's ribs. The crack of breaking bones echoed through the room. The last guard hesitated, looking at his fallen companions. Marcus gave him a chance to surrender, but the man charged anyway. A quick combination, jab, cross, hook, put him down hard. Harlow watched his elite security crumple with growing rage. He ripped off his command jacket, revealing massive arms covered in faded military tattoos. "Fine. I'll handle this myself. Just like you handled those innocent people in the streets?" Marcus circled left, staying light on his feet. Harlow struck first, a haymaker that could have taken Marcus's head off. But Marcus slipped the punch and countered with 3 rapid strikes to Harlow's kidney. The colonel grunted but didn't slow down. "You're soft," Harlow taunted, throwing a knee strike that Marcus barely blocked. "Too much time with civilians. Real soldiers follow orders." Marcus absorbed a body blow to get inside Harlow's guard. He unleashed a series of precise strikes: throat, solar plexus, floating rib. Each hit made Harlow stumble back, but the bigger man refused to go down. They crashed into a bank of computers, sending sparks flying. Harlow grabbed a keyboard and swung it like a club. Marcus deflected it with his forearm, feeling the plastic shatter. He retaliated with a jumping knee that caught Harlow in the chin. Blood sprayed from Harlow's split lip. He spat red and charged like a bull, driving Marcus into a wall. The impact knocked the wind from Marcus's lungs, but he brought his elbows down on Harlow's spine, breaking the hold. "This is for every person you profiled." Marcus unleashed a lightning-fast combination. "Every veteran you disrespected." His fists found gaps in Harlow's defense. "Every life you ruined with your hatred." Harlow absorbed the punishment and countered with a savage right hook that clipped Marcus's temple. Stars exploded in his vision. He rolled with the punch, but Harlow pressed his advantage, throwing heavy shots that forced Marcus to give ground. "You think you're special?" Harlow sneered between punches. "You're just another thug in a uniform. I've been putting down troublemakers like you for 30 years. Marcus felt his back hit a desk. Instead of retreating further, he used it as leverage, launching himself forward with a flying knee. The strike caught Harlow flush in the face, sending him staggering backward. The livestream's comments section exploded with support. Viewers watched Marcus press his advantage, striking with surgical precision. Each hit targeted weak points, pressure points, nerve clusters, joints. Harlow's brute force couldn't match Marcus's tactical expertise. But Harlow wasn't finished. He grabbed a chair and hurled it at Marcus's head. When Marcus dodged, Harlow closed the distance and landed a thunderous body shot that made Marcus's ribs scream in protest. "That's it," Harlow growled. "Feel what real power is." Marcus weathered the assault, remembering his training. He let Harlow wear himself out, throwing heavy punches, then struck back with devastating efficiency. A palm strike to the ear disrupted Harlow's balance. An elbow to the throat made him gasp for air. They traded blows in the center of the room, neither man willing to yield. Harlow fought with decades of pent-up hatred and prejudice behind every punch. Marcus fought with the righteous fury of the oppressed, each strike carrying the weight of justice. Blood and sweat flew as they battled. Harlow's superior size and strength met Marcus's speed and technique. The fight became a brutal dance of violence, each man representing opposing forces: tyranny versus freedom, hatred versus justice. Finally, Marcus saw his opening. Harlow overextended on a wild haymaker, leaving himself exposed. Marcus stepped in close, trapped Harlow's arm, and executed a perfect hip throw. The colonel crashed to the ground with bone-jarring force. Before Harlow could recover, Marcus locked him in a submission hold. He grabbed Harlow's arm and hyperextended it, applying careful pressure to the elbow joint. The colonel thrashed, but Marcus had him perfectly controlled. "Now," Marcus said, increasing the pressure until Harlow howled, "you're going to tell the truth. The whole country is watching." He turned Harlow's head toward the livestream camera. Thousands watched as Marcus forced the colonel to face his crimes. "Talk," Marcus commanded, applying more pressure to the joint. "Tell them why you really ordered this crackdown." "I'll die first," Harlow spat. Marcus twisted the arm further, making Harlow scream. "The truth, Colonel. Now." With cameras rolling and his arm nearly breaking, Harlow finally broke. "Fine," he screamed. "It was political. The whole thing. The crackdown, the profiling. All of it." "Details," Marcus demanded, maintaining pressure. Harlow's face contorted with pain and rage. "The election. We needed chaos in minority neighborhoods. Fear makes people accept control. The governor, he wanted an excuse for martial law. Keep certain people from voting. And the targeting of black veterans, specifically? Can't have respected community leaders interfering," Harlow gasped. "Military training makes them dangerous. Had to make examples. Show everyone that status wouldn't protect them." Marcus released the hold, but kept Harlow pinned. Within minutes, the confession went viral. Cell phones across the city lit up with notifications. News stations interrupted regular programming. Social media exploded with outrage. Outside, the sounds of celebration filled the streets. National Guard units, seeing their commander exposed, began standing down. Sergeant Kane led several squads in lowering their weapons, refusing to continue the oppression. Within hours, the governor's office released a panicked statement distancing themselves from Harlow. By nightfall, 3 senior officials had resigned. Federal investigators swarmed the command center, leading Harlow away in handcuffs as news helicopters circled overhead. Marcus emerged from the building to thunderous cheers. Thousands had gathered, holding phones that had live-streamed his victory. Among them stood Darius Johnson, tears streaming down his face as he led the crowd in chanting Marcus's name. Evelyn Carter pushed through the crowd, her eyes shining with pride. She hugged Marcus tightly, whispering, "You did it, son. You showed them what real service looks like." Sergeant Kane approached cautiously, still in her uniform but with her rifle slung. "Commander Steele," she said formally, then broke into a smile. "Thank you for helping us remember our real duty." The celebration spread across the city. Martial law crumbled as unit after unit stood down. Detained protesters were released. Politicians who had supported the crackdown scrambled to apologize, their careers in tatters. Local news interviewed Marcus on the steps of City Hall. "This was never about me," he told them, his voice carrying across the square. "This was about justice, about holding power accountable, about showing that no one is above the law, especially those who claim to enforce it." Darius stepped up beside him, phone in hand. "Y'all seeing this?" he shouted to his followers. "This is how you fight back, with discipline, with purpose, with unity." Marcus showed us the way. The next few days brought sweeping changes. Federal civil rights investigators descended on the city. The governor resigned in disgrace. Harlow faced multiple charges, his reputation destroyed by his own recorded confession. A week later, Marcus sat in Evelyn's kitchen, helping her sort through donations for families hurt during the crackdown. The neighborhood had come together, stronger than ever. "You know what makes me proudest?" Evelyn said, packing canned goods into boxes. "Not just that you won, but how you won. You showed those young people like Darius that you can fight injustice without losing your humanity." Marcus nodded, thinking of the lives changed. Sergeant Kane had been promoted, now leading training reforms in the National Guard. Darius had started a community organization, channeling his passion into lasting change. The city was healing, rebuilding with new awareness and unity. 2 weeks after the fight, Marcus helped Evelyn carry groceries up her front steps. His ribs still ached from the battle, but the pain felt like a badge of honor now. Children played freely in the streets, no longer afraid of armored vehicles or hostile soldiers. "Look at them," Evelyn said, watching the kids. "They'll grow up knowing that someone stood up for them. That justice is possible if you're brave enough to demand it." Marcus smiled faintly, feeling true peace for the first time since the crackdown began. The constant tension in his shoulders had finally eased. His service hadn't been in vain. He'd protected his community when they needed him most. Neighbors waved as they passed, calling out greetings. The fear was gone from their eyes, replaced by quiet dignity. Marcus had shown them their own strength, their power when united against oppression. "What next?" Evelyn asked, as they unpacked the groceries. "You could run for office, you know. People would vote for you in a heartbeat." Marcus shook his head. "I'm done fighting for now. Time to help rebuild, to make sure this never happens again." Through her window, they could see the city skyline. No more helicopters circled overhead. No more sirens wailed. The streets belonged to the people again, and Marcus had helped make it possible. He carried the last bag inside, pausing to watch children shoot hoops at the corner court. Their laughter carried on the breeze, the sound of freedom, of justice restored, of a community reborn from the ashes of oppression. Evelyn squeezed his arm gently. "You did good, son. You did real good." Marcus nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle in his heart. The battle was over. Justice had prevailed. And in its wake, something beautiful had grown. A neighborhood united, a people empowered, and a peace hard-won but lasting. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.